All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming by today to our webinar on how to get the best price on your dream home. Before we get started, a little bit of background, a little housekeeping. First of all, who is this guy who's talking to you? My name is Mike McElroy. I'm the founder of Center Coast Realty. What is Center Coast Realty? Center Coast Realty is a residential real estate brokerage. We help Chicagoans buy and sell homes, but we are a little bit different than some of the other firms you might see out there. When you work with most of the bigger brokerages, you're actually working with an independent contractor who's affiliated with that brokerage. So you never actually know quite what you're going to get. They might just be doing real estate as kind of a part-time gig. We've heard from some of our clients who've worked with others that they sort of feel like those people might be just trying to get a commission and get it by the first place. So at Center Coast, we wanted to do things a little bit differently. Our agents are all full-time employees who do nothing but real estate. They do get a commission, but it's based on our client satisfaction. So we also have dedicated project managers to check all the boxes, make sure everything's running smoothly. The whole thing kind of creates a nice, modern, relaxed buying experience. So let's talk about, that's who I am, that's who we are, that's what we're doing here today. Let's talk about why we do webinars like this. So if you're on this webinar, you probably already know that real estate is an incredibly powerful way to build opportunity for yourself. And educating people about how to do that is a huge part of our mission as a company. So that's why we put together this webinar series. We want to lead with education, make sure that we have nice, informed future home buyers out there. And when the time comes and you're ready to buy that first place and make it yours, we know that a lot of the work's already going to be done. So after working with hundreds and hundreds of home buyers over the years, we now know what some of the most common questions are, what some of the things that people feel the most unprepared for. And so these webinars are all about getting that information out to you out front. So today we're going to talk about how to get the best price on a home. And you'll find as we get into it that a lot of that has to do with preparation and planning. So we thought it would be a really good webinar to tackle for people who are maybe, whether they're in the middle of the process now, or if they're a little bit further from purchasing a home, you're in a great spot. Now is absolutely the time to start thinking about some of this stuff so you can put yourself in a good position when it's time to buy. So before we get into any more specifics, I just love to let's get a little bit of a feel for the room. First question is, for everyone who's here, have you ever bought a home before? How many first-time buyers do we have? And how many repeats? All right, got some green people. That's good. We're gonna get you in a great position by the end of this. Next question, wanted to know kind of where are you at in the process? Are you out there looking for places right there now? Is this just kind of a thought that you might be purchasing something down the line? Are you under contract right now? Where are you at in the process? Dokie, doing a lot of planning. That's good. This is exactly the time to be starting to make some of these preparations. So last question I have is just kind of a general one. Is there anything that you want to get answered today? What brought you to this webinar? What were you hoping to learn? Go ahead and type that in the Q&A. You'll see there's two options. One's a chat. Don't use that. Use the Q&A if you can. And let us know what you're kind of hoping to learn today. And I'll make sure that I touch on it at some point during the presentation. And if nothing's coming to mind right now, that's all good. If you have a question, type it in that box, and we'll get to it in the rest of the program. All right, so here's what we're gonna get into today. The first thing I want you all to understand is what is going on in the current real estate market right now in Chicago, because that's key to understanding the dynamics of that market is key to understanding how you're going to be able to capitalize on that and to live up to the promise of this webinar, get yourself the best possible deal on a home. So we're going to start there. Once we understand the market, I'm going to give you guys some tips on how to put yourself in the best position to go out and get that best price. Because like I said, a lot of it is preparation. Once you've identified a home, we're going to start to learn a little bit more about the seller. I'm going to talk about what you want to know about the seller's position. So you can open up that dialogue with your realtor and sort of start having that discussion ahead of time. So when you're deciding, sometimes there's kind of this moment where you're interested in a home and you're trying to decide if this is the one to make a move on. You can start asking some of these questions. And finally, a lot of this comes down to writing a really strong offer. It's not all about the price. There's other things that go into a strong offer. There's other ways that you can tip the scales in your favor. So we're going to end with that. Again, anything else comes up, feel free to drop it in that Q&A. That's where we're going to go. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with the current market. So it has been an interesting year across the board, hasn't it? The Chicago real estate market is no exception. And it's definitely been different than a typical year. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the past couple of years. The first thing everyone always asks is prices. Are prices going up or down, right? And it definitely depends. It depends on the neighborhood. It depends on the type of home. They all behave differently, but just at a high level, you can see here that prices are fairly steady over the past couple of years, although we did see some signs of life. This is a bar graph, so it kind of shows you the big picture, year over year changes within there. There's been little ups and downs as we go. That's the same with any market, but generally prices have been trending up over the past couple of years. Why? This is why. Interest rates. Since no one here has ever purchased a home before, I'm assuming no one has a mortgage, and no one here has ever been quoted a mortgage interest rate in the past. If you had been quoted an interest rate in the past, chances are almost 100% that it would have been higher than the interest rate that you would be quoted today. Unless something has dramatically changed about your personal situation or credit, interest rates, and I feel like I've been in the real estate business about 11 years now. I feel like I've been saying this my entire career. However, I'm gonna say it again. Interest rates are at historic lows. And this time I really mean they have literally never been this low before. They bottomed out at, 2.86% for a 30-year fixed rate. Folks, that's bananas. That is an extremely low interest rate. What's going on there? Without getting into a complicated discussion about like the bond market and the Fed, basically the more instability and uncertainty there is in kind of the rest of the financial world, typically the lower interest rates go. So, you know, here we are, 2020. You can imagine interest rates are pretty low. It's hard to see them going a lot lower than this, but we also don't expect them to go skyrocketing upward anytime soon. They're probably going to stay fairly low, at least for the next 12 months. That's what it's looking like. So just to give you guys a little perspective about why that pushes home prices up, check out these bullets over here on the left-hand side. If you were going to get a $400,000 mortgage on a 30-year fixed rate at 5%, you'd be paying about $2,100, $2,150 per month just on your mortgage. That's principal and interest, not including taxes and insurance and all that other stuff. If that rate drops to 4%, all of a sudden you're saving yourself $237, only $1,900 a month. 3%, it goes down another $200 some, over $200, and you're saving $461 compared to that 5% rate. Rates have been at 5% within the last couple of years. Not too often. Usually they've been in the mid fours over the past couple of years, and every once in a while they go below 4. All of a sudden they're below 3. So that's why home prices have been going up over the last year, okay? Again, that's over the last 12 months or so. What we're about to do now is zoom in a little bit closer at what's been happening just the past couple of months. So let's do that. Well, this is an interesting graph. This is the number of new listings that have hit the market in the month of August compared to the month of August for the past couple of years. Here's what I can tell you about August in general. Usually, it's kind of a slow month. All the excitement in real estate typically happens in the first 6 months of the year. That's when we have our busy spring market. Most of the sellers put their homes on the market. That's when most buyers are out there looking for homes. It's busy, busy, busy. Us realtors are running around, losing our heads for about 6 months. And then at some point in May or June, things tend to start to slow down a little bit. And they pretty much gradually get slower and slower through the rest of the year, all the way into the holidays, into December. That's not what happened this year. This year, things got off to their normal start. And then March, you may remember, there is a pandemic, and everyone just kind of hit the deck for about 3 weeks, and real estate activity ground to a halt for about 3 weeks. And then it slowly started trickling back up, and all of a sudden, by June, it was an incredibly busy seller's market. And when I say seller's market, I mean there are a lot of buyers and not that many homes to choose from. So it's good if you're one of the few sellers, life is good for you. If you're one of the buyers, it's kind of a scramble to get a home. That was June and the first half of July. What happened after that? All of the home sellers in Chicago who are thinking about maybe moving in the next couple of years, they heard that it was a seller's market. And they said, you know what? We were thinking about moving in the next year or two, and we've been spending a lot of time indoors lately. Now's the time to move. So they did, and they put their homes on the market in August. They put 70.5% more homes on the market in August than they did in either of the past 2 Augusts. So what did that do? All of a sudden, buyers are in the driver's seat. We've got, just to give you an example, let's zoom in on one particular neighborhood. Number of 2-bed, 2-bath condos. So a lot of people who are interested in the West Loop, buying their first home, they're looking for that 2-bed, 2-bath condo. If you were looking for a 2-bed, 2-bath condo back in 2017 in the West Loop, you had 61 homes to choose from in the month of August. In 2018, you had 88, you had a little more. By 2019, you had 106 because people in the West Loop saw their taxes go up, and they also saw they had a ton of equity, and they decided to finally sell. Today, you have 166 options to choose from. Okay, so that's creeping up on triple the number of options. And that's just the West Loop. That's one example. But I can tell you it's like this in a lot of neighborhoods downtown, and in kind of the more centrally located neighborhoods in Chicago. As you go out into the suburbs of Chicago, it's still a little bit more of a seller's market. That's a slightly different dynamic that's happening there. So, like I said, buyers are suddenly in the driver's seat. Here's all you need to know about this chart. So one of the things that we look at as a good measure of supply and demand is called month supply. All you need to know is that if anywhere between 4 and 6 months of supply is considered a balanced market. In other words, buyers don't really have the upper hand, sellers don't really have the upper hand. Less than 4 months supply means sellers have the upper hand. And more than 6 months supply means buyers have the upper hand. So let's look at this graph. What do we see? For the past couple of years, it's been a seller's market. It started to balance out in 2018, 2019. If we took this graph back further, we'd see that in 2015, 2016, 2017, pretty much any year between 2013 and 2017, it was very much a seller's market. Started to balance out the past 2 years, and all of a sudden, buyers are very much back in the driver's seat. We are just tipping our way into what would be considered a classic buyer's market. So, and one other thing, median market time as a result is going up. It makes sense, right? There's more homes to choose from. Buyers aren't scrambling quite as much for the best ones. It means they stay on the market a little bit longer. And if you're looking for a home, that's nice for you. It means you don't have to, fake some kind of doctor's appointment to get out of work to go look at a home really quickly and make an offer right away. So what does this mean to you? That's really the upshot of all of this. It means that if you see a home you like, there's a better chance that you're not going to have to fight 3 other people to get it. And there's not quite as much competition, even for the best homes. If you see some homes that have been sitting on the market for a little bit longer, chances are you could get them to come down on that price a little bit, okay? So there's more room for negotiation. You have more options. Bottom line is you can save some money if you know what you're doing. So the upshot of all of this is it's the best time to be a buyer in Chicago as it has been in several years. It's been, like I said, it's been very much a seller's market. Suddenly buyers are back in the driver's seat. However, I do want to set some expectations here. As a result of that, we can expect that home prices probably won't appreciate quite as rapidly as they did between, say, 2013 and 2017. That's kind of a given at this point. To be fair, home prices accelerated at an incredible rate between 2013 and 2017. Back then, if someone said, hey, I'm thinking about buying a home, how long should I plan to own it? We would say, honestly, the way things are going, after 2 or 3 years, it's going to make a lot of sense. You're probably going to have gained a lot of value and be really glad that you didn't rent during that time, because the value of your property has gone straight up. Buying now, it's a little bit more of a more normalized market. If you're buying a home now, you should plan to stick around for at least 5 or 6 years. Plan to own that property for at least 5 or 6 years to really capture the benefits of owning a home, paying down principal, experiencing that 3 or 4% appreciation per year, hopefully annualized. You're going to want to plan to own it a little bit longer just in case home prices don't appreciate over the next year or two, which is a possibility. Like I said, they're appreciating right now, which is really good thanks to these interest rates, but it's possible that they may not appreciate as rapidly as they did between 2013 and 2017. And that's okay. Markets are like that. The longer you own a home, the longer you are able to reap those benefits. It's just that a couple of years ago, you could basically day trade houses. You buy one, and 2 years later, it's suddenly worth a ton more, and you can sell it and make a bunch of money. So that's probably not what's happening right now. And it's just good to kind of have that expectation. But because it is a buyer's market, you can go in and negotiate a little bit more aggressively and get yourself a little bit of a deal. And that's another way to put yourself in a position to capture equity when the market does heat up again. Okay, so that's what's going on in the market. That's the opportunity out there right now. And I hope it didn't get too technical. What I want you to take away from this is every year we start talking to people around this time, and they all say, we're looking to buy a home sometime in the next 6 to 8 months. And we say, great, let's start planning for that. But by the way, if there's any chance you can buy a home this year, you might want to do that, because what happens every single year is come springtime, come February and March, things get really busy. And like I said, it shifts back to that seller's market. It's always a seller's market in February, March, April, and part of May. It's always a buyer's market in August, September, October, November, December. Some years it's a little more of a seller's market in the spring. Some years it's a little more of a buyer's market the second half of the year, but it's always a buyer's market the second half of the year. So really right now, kind of the message we want to get out is, we're happy to help you buy a home whenever you're ready, whenever it makes sense to you. But if you have plans in the next 6 to 8 months, consider maybe moving that timeline up a little bit, because right now is really the best time to be a buyer. But if it makes you feel better, we have sellers who every year, they tell us they want to sell their place. We tell them they should sell it in March, and they put it on the market in July. It takes longer to sell, and they don't make as much money. But that's what I want you to take away from the discussion of the market. So now that we've talked about that, let's talk about how we're going to take advantage of this great buyer's market that we're seeing right now in Chicago. So first, we're going to get in a good position. All right. It's all about preparation. And the key to preparation in negotiating a good price on a home is being flexible. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is start early. Okay. What do I mean by start early? It means that if your lease is ending in April next year or February or something like that, start looking now. Okay. The reason we'll discuss a little bit more as you go on is it allows you to be a little bit more patient. If your lease is ending in 90 to 120 days, you're going to need to buy a home sooner because your lease is ending. Or or maybe you have some other options, in which case you could be a little bit more flexible. But by being flexible on your close date and starting earlier, it allows you to take your time and wait for that great opportunity to come along and pounce on it and not be forced to just choose from whatever options there are now. And you might get out in the market and see a great opportunity right now, and that's great. Go for it. But if you don't see one right away, then you're going to be forced with a choice. Do we wait, or do we pounce on what we can see right now? And if you have that flexibility in when you're moving, then you can choose to wait, which gives you the opportunity to get a better price. And the way to have that flexibility is to get started early. The next thing to be flexible on, and this is an easy one for buyers, but it means the world for sellers, is be flexible on your inspection timeline and your mortgage timeline. So without getting too technical, let me just talk about those two things. When you make an offer for a home and put it under contract, there's two things that are going to need to happen. One, you're going to need to hire an inspector to come look at the property and make sure that there are not any unforeseen issues that might cause you not to want to purchase it. And the other thing is you're going to need to get a mortgage. Now, 19 and a half times out of 20, everything goes great with the inspection and the mortgage is no problem. But every once in a while, the inspection happens and we find some issues and you decide you're not comfortable with the place. Or you decide, we still want to buy it, but we're going to need a significant discount on buying it. And that might or might not work for the seller. And again, the mortgage almost always goes great, but every once in a while, an issue comes up. And sellers know these things. They know that sometimes they sell their home to somebody, they put a contract together, and then it doesn't quite come to fruition. And the absolute worst thing that you can have happen to you if you're a home seller is to take your home off the market and then have it fall apart 2 months later. After all the other buyers who might have bought your home have gone and bought other places, and you're now starting from scratch after 2 months. You've made plans to buy your next place. It's a big old mess. So if a deal is going to fall apart, a seller wants to know about it right away. So what do you do as a buyer? You be flexible on your inspection timeline and on your mortgage. So what does that mean you need to do? First of all, it means you need to schedule your inspection right away. And you need to make sure your realtor promises that and sells that to the listing agent. Says, hey, we're going to schedule this inspection. If you accept this offer, our inspection happens tomorrow. If you can make that happen, you're going to be in a better position with that seller. Likewise, you're flexible on working with the mortgage professional of your choosing. If you work with a mortgage professional who's a bank that does nothing but mortgages, that knows Chicago, and that has experience in doing lots of loans, then you're going to be able to get that mortgage done faster, and you won't need to drag out the mortgage process. And again, you can promise that to the seller up front. That's valuable to them. Again, they want the most money for the home, but they want these other things too. They know that if something goes wrong later on in the process, it can end up costing them a lot of money. So get those things squared away with your realtor up front. The next thing is be flexible about the timing of the season. I kind of just talked about this when I was talking about the market. So just real quick, once again, springtime, lots of homes on the market, but even there's more homes on the market in the spring, but there's more buyers out looking for homes in the spring, which means you have more competition. So while there might technically be more deals happening, it's actually going to feel like you have less options in April than it does right now. So again, now's a great time to be looking for a home. If you don't see what you like, you got the spring still around the corner, but now's the time to start looking. Overall, the more options you have, the better position you are in. There's something we talk about in negotiation theory called the best alternative to the negotiated agreement. Basically, what it means is that typically in negotiation, whichever party has a better alternative to doing the deal on the table is in a better position, okay? So if you want to buy this home and the seller's willing to sell it to you for $400,000, but you only want to pay $390,000, and you, if you want to buy that home, but there's two other homes that you like, maybe you don't want to pay $400,000, and that's okay. Then you can walk away. And the seller might say, okay, all right, we'll do it for $390,000. But if this is the only place that you like, the only place that you want, because there's just not that many options out there, and the sellers have a second showing tomorrow, they have someone coming back, bringing their parents by to take a look at the place, They had an offer last week. It just didn't quite work out with the timing. They're feeling pretty good. They feel like they have options. And all of a sudden, you're going to be a little bit less good of a position to get that $400,000 price. So by starting early, timing the season right, and having a little bit more to offer the sellers, you're going to give yourself more options and a stronger negotiating position. Okay. So now that we've gotten in a good position, we're going to look for homes that are in weaker positions. Okay. So what does that mean? What is a home that doesn't have as many, what is a seller that doesn't have as many options? If you see a home that's been on the market for a long time, then typically that means there's it hasn't sold in that period of time. It's probably overpriced, to be honest. So you're going to need to get that price down. And you're going to need to negotiate. The good news is it's been on the market for a long time. The odds of you having to compete with another buyer are low, and the odds that the seller wants to just get this thing done with are a little bit higher. Again, every situation is different. Some sellers just don't care. They're not motivated. But some sellers really do want to sell, and they just haven't gotten any buyers yet. That's a motivated seller in a bad position for them, but a good position for you. Another way to find homes that are either on the market for a long time or are about to be on the market for a long time is look for bad pictures. Look for dirty places that don't show well at all. Look for ugly walls and appliances that look like they're out of the late 90s. This requires a little bit of vision, but I'll tell you a quick story actually about a condo that I bought about 4 years ago. It was in the West Loop. It was a 2-bed, 2-bath, and it hit the market for, I think they wanted mid-4s for it. And the pictures were just gross. It had been rented for about 5 or 6 years. When I got in there, it was a little out of date. But more importantly, it wasn't just that it was out of date. It was that the carpet was dirty and the cabinets you touched the cabinets and they were like sticky. It was kind of gross, but honestly, the place was great. It was a really nice place. So this was 2016. It was one of the hottest sellers markets in the West Loop, which is about the hottest area in the city at that time. And everything was selling right away with multiple offers, but this place didn't. And the reason it didn't was because the sellers didn't do a good job putting it on the market. So I took a look at it and said, hey, you know what? I think I can make this place work if I clean it up with a little spit shine. I also decided to do a bunch of remodeling to it too. And I got a significant discount off of the list price because I was open to purchasing something that other people didn't think was that good, but really it was. You just have to kind of have that vision. So that's really my takeaway for you here, is to look for places that have been on the market for a while. And if you see bad photos, if you see a listing that's just not appealing to you, literally sometimes it's just the realtor took photos with their iPhone and they used those for the listings. I don't know why, but that happens. And it makes it look not nearly as good as the other places, but take a second look, especially if you see kind of crummy pictures. Might be worth a look. Okay, let's talk about a couple of don'ts. Here's some ways that you can end up putting yourself in a bad negotiating position. First one is to have a home sale contingency. This means that I think everyone on this call on this is a first-time buyer, so we're not going to talk about this too much. But if you need to sell one home in order to buy your next home, and you're not going to be able, you won't have the money to buy the next place without selling the other one. It's less appealing to sellers. So there are some solutions and ways around that sometimes, but ideally you want to try and sell your other place first and then buy your next home, because otherwise sellers they're going to be worried that if they accept your offer, you won't be able to sell your old home, and then you won't be able to buy the place, and they'll be right back where they started. Another way, and I touched on this earlier, to put yourself in a bad position is to be too picky. So every once in a while, work with someone and they've really got just this really specific thing that they're looking for. And it kind of doesn't exist, or it's extremely rare. And that's hard to negotiate when you're in a position like that because of what I just talked about. You don't have very many options because what you're looking for is very rare. It's good to have a clear understanding of what you're looking for, and you don't want to get too all over the place. You don't want to be looking at 10 different neighborhoods, because then you won't be able to tell a good deal when you see it, because there's too much to choose from. You'll overwhelm yourself with choices. So you do want to narrow it down a bit, but be careful you don't narrow your scope so much that the right home only comes along and hits the market once or twice a year. Because if that happens, odds are you're not going to be in as great of a negotiating position. Here's the last one. Don't hire amateurs to represent you in your home purchase, whether that's the realtor or your mortgage lender or your attorney. A good, savvy listing agent is going to speak to most of those people before they talk to their clients, the sellers, about whether to accept your offer. I have absolutely had, especially in multiple offer situations, but also with sellers who are trying to decide if they want to come down that last $5,000 to $10,000 on their purchase price. I've had them ask, if we take this place off the market, is it going to close? And what do you think of the other side? What do you think about the buyer and their team? And I've had realtors who make mistakes in the contract, or just kind of sloppy, aren't able to answer basic questions about, their buyer and their plans. We've had lenders who are known to kind of drop the ball. And sometimes when we see that on an offer, we're just going to tell our clients and report the news, but oftentimes they're going to pass on that offer if there's another option out there, or if it comes to just dropping the last few $1,000, they're going to say, you know what, we just rather wait for a better offer to come along. So make sure that you pick a team that knows what it's doing. I can tell you from being on the listing side and representing sellers, it's very apparent very early on, and it does make a difference. All right. So now you understand the market opportunity out there. You understand how to get in a good position. There's one other thing that you want to do, which is arm yourself with knowledge. And this is something that your realtor is going to help you with. So I'm going to move through it a little bit quickly. But you want to understand why the seller is moving. Basically, are they motivated? Do they need to close soon? Again, how many options do they have? Can they wait? Do they have the option of waiting 6 weeks for another offer to come along? Or are they under contract on a new place because they have a home sale contingency and they need your offer in order to make their dream home happen? Okay. If that's the case, you're in a better position. Likewise with the job transfer. They're just wasting money every day that home is vacant. And sometimes it makes sense to stop wasting money and just accept your offer. Talking about when is the seller moving? Which month are they closing in? Do they need to move do they need to sell this place in order to buy another one? Basically, same stuff. Does the seller have a mortgage? And if so, what's the balance? This is getting pretty tricky, but what we can see on the back end is through tax records, and we can see what the seller's mortgage was when they got it, and we can just kind of reverse engineer the math and figure out how much they owe. If we figured out that they're already buying another place, a lot of times by doing some sleuthing with some of our realtor Jedi powers, we can figure out which home they're buying someplace else. Okay, so we know that purchase price, and we know roughly how much equity they have in their home. And if we already know that they need to sell this place to buy the next one, we can get a pretty good guess at how much money they need out of this sale in order to buy their next place. So if it turns out they probably only need around $150K in net proceeds after they pay off their old mortgage from this home, and we know that your offer most likely nets them $157, there might be a little bit more room for negotiation, right? Because at the end of the day, they really just want that next place. Okay, so that's just a little background work that you can do. Last thing, you know the market. You've gotten in a good position. You've done some sleuthing on the sellers. It's time to make sure to put all that information to work and write yourself a nice, strong offer. And again, your realtor will help you craft this offer, but here's how it's gonna go. First off, some of the basics. You need to have a pre-approval. If you didn't come to our last webinar on how to get a mortgage for your dream home, we're gonna be doing that one again, so stay tuned. Definitely want to make sure you are good and pre-approved with, like I said, a local knowledgeable lender who only does mortgages. You're going to want to make sure that that offer includes a cover letter. Your realtor will help you with that, and a clean contract. If you are being faxed a contract, you've made a mistake earlier in the process. Everything is digital these days. This is really just to let you know that you're not going to be chasing down a fax machine or a scanner when you're putting your offer together. It's all digital. It's signed online through DocuSign, so you don't have to worry about that. You can do it from your phone. So that's the basics of an offer. Let's talk about some of the extras. The first thing you can do is put down a higher down payment. And again, it's not like you can just say, oh, we'll just put down more money. In fact, there are reasons, financial reasons, that you might not want to put down as much of a down payment. I'm just here to tell you that if your number one goal is to get the best possible price on a home, sometimes a higher down payment is just, it's one more little thing that can help a bit. It's not a total game changer, but it does help. For reasons that are too complicated to get in here today, it just increases the odds of your home closing a bit. And again, like we talked about, every seller, they take it off the market, they want to know that it's going to close. So this gives you, this makes your offer just a little bit more appealing if you have that higher down payment. Close date. Sometimes having a close date sooner is better. Sometimes having a close date later is better. And this is kind of what I was talking about before. A home seller might be under contract on their next home, in which case they might want a sooner close. A home seller might not have even found their next home yet. And they might want a longer close date. So again, kind of going back to being flexible, if you can be flexible, you can pick the close date that's best for the seller, whether it gets them to their new home faster or in time at all, or if it gets them the extra time they need to pick out their forever home, which the next place they buy might be. Maybe they want to stay there a long time. Like I said, fast inspection helps a lot. And earnest money. Real quick, earnest money is a deposit you put down on your home. It stays in an escrow account at the title company or at the seller's brokerage. And basically, it's just money to give you a little bit of skin in the game. Slightly higher earnest money just shows you're a little bit more serious. Again, that one, again, is not necessarily always a game changer, but if you can pull it off, it doesn't hurt. All right. So those are the basics and some of those little extra things you can do. Let's say you really want to pull out all the stops. Getting the best price on a home is your number one goal. Well, here's some higher level stuff that you can play with. It comes with trade-offs though, so I just want to be upfront about those. One thing you can do is an as-is writer. So I told you about that condo I bought about 4 years ago in the West Loop. I did an as-is writer on that deal. What an as-is deal is it means that if you purchase the home, you're going to still do the inspection. You're still going to have your inspector come through and give the place a thorough once over, but it basically is a promise to the seller that you are not going to ask them to fix anything. So you might find out that the faucet's a little leaky. We're not going to ask the seller to fix it. You shouldn't ask the seller to fix that anyway. You might find out that the dishwasher's broken. That's a bummer. But you're not going to ask this. You're promising you're not going to ask the seller to fix it. Now, if you find so many things wrong with the place that you just decide you don't want it anymore at all, you can still back out of the contract and get your earnest money deposit back. So it's not like you're just, diving in head first without looking. You're still going to do your due diligence and you still have an out. It's basically kind of a pinky swear with the seller that says you're not going to ask for anything for them to fix stuff. The reason that's appealing to a seller is a lot of times, and again, speaking as a listing agent, you get this great offer from this buyer. It's a nice high price. They want to close on all the right terms. And then they come in and do their inspection. And it's always takes 5 days for them to schedule the inspection. And then they ask for an extension. And you finally get their list back from the inspection. And they want you to fix a million things. Or they want like a $10,000 credit. Folks, it happens. It's really frustrating. So this is basically you saying, we promise we're not going to do that. We're not going to do anything like that. We're not going to nickel and dime you. We're not going to use the inspection as a chance to basically renegotiate the purchase price. So again, there's some trade-offs there. If you do that, you can't say, oh, shoot. So I did this, like I said, and it turns out the balances on 3 of the windows were broken. It's about a $450 repair. I didn't want to pay that, but you know what? I saved a lot more than $450 on the purchase price of this home by doing an as-is offer. So to me, it was worth it. That's one option. Appraisal guarantees. This is getting interesting. This doesn't come up quite as much if you're negotiating a good discount, but if there's a competitive situation and you're trying to decide, say you're bidding against another buyer and you're trying to decide how much to bid, you could potentially save yourself a little bit of money in that you don't have to pay quite as much by guaranteeing the appraisal. So one other thing that can tank a deal is if the appraiser comes by from the bank and says, say you wanted to pay $460,000 for this place, and the appraiser says it's worth $450,000. Okay, so you might be sitting there thinking, why would I want a $460,000 place that's only worth $450,000? Well, without getting on my soapbox too much, appraisal isn't so much of a science as it is kind of a guesstimate. The truth is a property is worth what someone is willing to pay for it on the open market. You and your realtor are going to do lots of research and due diligence on the comparable sales. Every once in a while, we get an appraiser who typically drive out from somewhere kind of far away. They're only getting paid a couple $100 by the bank. They whip this thing out real fast, and frankly, they don't do a great job. The problem is if that happens, all of a sudden the bank, you were planning on putting down 10%, the bank is only going to give you a loan for 90% of $450,000 and not $460,000, which means you're not going to be able to get the seller their $460,000 without pulling an extra $10,000 out of your pocket. So it's a real bummer of a situation. It's tough to fix. Sometimes we can. It's very rare. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen from time to time. And what we've seen is some home buyers will say, hey, sellers, listen, if this happens in the unlikely event that an appraisal comes in low, we'll cover the difference, because other times what happens is buyers can't cover the difference and the sellers have to either cancel the deal and go back on the market, or if they're really, really motivated, reduce their purchase price, which might be good for you. But again, if you're trying to give the seller the best possible terms to get the lowest price, it's one more tool in your toolbox. Again, pretty risky. Have a really detailed conversation with your realtor before deciding to do it. It's just an option. You can waive other contingencies too. We've seen people waive inspection contingencies and just say, we're just going to buy this place no matter what. This is really good for if you are, if you're planning on doing some work on the place, if you're super handy and you're not worried about it. Again, not recommended, but it happens from time to time. You can also waive the mortgage contingency completely and say, no matter what, we will buy this place. Even if we can't get a mortgage, we'll figure it out. Usually the best reason to do that is because you're paying cash for the home. You don't need a mortgage at all. And that's definitely very appealing to sellers. So like I said, be very careful before playing with some of these things. The other thing I want to talk about, in the unlikely event that you do get yourself in a multiple offer situation, again, like I said, it's not happening a ton in this market, but it does happen from time to time. You're on this webinar because you want to get the best possible price on your home purchase. Well, you found a hot home. It was probably underpriced, and that's why it got multiple offers in this market. And now you're in this position where you want to buy it and another buyer wants to buy it. The seller, if they're smart, isn't going to just keep going back and forth and saying, do I have 450? Do I have 455? They're not going to do that. What they're going to say is, all right, folks, we've received multiple offers on the property. Out of fairness to both parties, we'd like everyone to submit their highest and best offer by tomorrow at noon. And then you say, how much should we offer? And your realtor says, this is what I think the place is worth. And you say, how much are the other people going to offer? And your realtor says, we don't know, but maybe this, maybe that. And it's kind of a guessing game. It's a stressful situation to be in. And you're worried, you might really want that place. You're worried and you're kind of willing to pay more, like 465, 470, but you're worried that you're going to offer 470. And what if the other person only offered 455? You're going to feel like a schmuck. You'll never actually know that. So you'll have that kind of hanging over your head. You don't know if you paid too much for it. So one way around that is called an escalation clause. With the escalation clause, it's a fancy trick. It basically says, hey, home seller, I'm going to offer you $450,000 for this home. But if you get an offer that's higher than that, I will beat that offer by $1,000, $5,000. We'll beat any offer that you get by $5,000 more dollars up to $470,000. So then what happens is if that other party only pays $455 for that place, you get it for $460. If they pay $467, then all of a sudden you're $465 or more, then all of a sudden your offer is $470. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's a little bit of math involved in your offer, but that way you at least know that there was another offer, and they have to show you a copy of the contract that the other offer made. You just have to kind of trust that they're not about to commit fraud and potentially go to jail. So that's how escalation clauses work. Again, these are all fancy tricks that you can pull out to really get yourself the best possible price, usually in kind of some specific scenarios. But I wanted to cover them here so that 6 months from now, if you're buying a home and your realtor brings up one of these ideas, it's at least somewhat familiar to you. Okay. Last, we went around the office and just asked our different agents, what are some other tricks? What are some other tips to make your offer stand out, potentially get a better price? One of them is to make sure your realtor picks up the phone and actually, this is something our realtors do, get on the phone. I can't tell you how many times we would get an offer on a listing out of the blue. We never even heard from this buyer's agent before. We know they showed the place, but we didn't know they were submitting an offer. And they just said, yeah, here's the offer. It means so much more when the agent actually picks up the phone and calls, tells us a little bit about the buyer, tells us where they're coming from with their purchase price. Just builds a little bit more of a relationship. It keeps things from becoming adversarial down the line, especially if you're trying to offer a lower price. Another idea, this was kind of a wild one. We had a buyer, we found out that the seller was a huge Blackhawks fan, and the buyer had a hookup for Blackhawks tickets. This is kind of random, but it worked. They got a great deal on that place. They offered the seller some Blackhawks tickets, really good seats as part of their offer, and they saved themselves some money on the home, probably more than the value of those tickets. So that was created there. We had a couple other funny stories like that. So again, this is where picking up the phone from the previous step, again, it's more for your realtor to do, but I left it on there so you understand that it's important to learn these things. Earlier on, we talked about knowledge is power. When is the seller moving? Where are they going? What other stuff do we know about them? Did we see, 5 pictures of them kissing the Stanley Cup in the study that their realtor asked them to take down and they refused because they love the Blackhawks that much? And you got a Blackhawks hookup? Yeah, it doesn't happen every time, but you can sometimes pull it off. We've had people connect them with, we've put realtors in touch. We've put the sellers in touch with a realtor or someone who we could connect them with who would be helpful in the place that they're about to move to. Another really good one is a personal letter to the sellers. You are not above flattery. So tell the story. Why did you want to buy this home? How is your life going to be different once you do? And here's my favorite one. What you love about the seller's decoration and finish choices. Here's what we're trying to do here, folks. When you submit an offer, it's very common, and we've worked with a ton of sellers as well as a ton of buyers, and it's very common for the sellers to just kind of see a number. They don't see you. They don't see a person. And if they don't like the number, all of a sudden they don't like you, right? So you might be on this webinar because you're trying to get the best possible price, and that means offering a lower number. So they're not going to like that number, chances are. So we need them to at least like you. There's been a lot of research done on this, and parties are more likely to reach an agreement when they have a little bit of a relationship with each other and when they like each other, right? So we're going to get them to like you a little bit. Write that cover letter. Just tell them a little bit about yourselves and what you like about the home, why you're purchasing a home, kind of your story. And when you talk about what you like about the home, focus on their decoration choices. Here's why. Guarantee they slaved over most of those decisions. And a lot of sellers are kind of insecure about their home decorating choices. Everyone is, right? That rug, is it too big? Is it too small? Is it the right shade? Did I paint this right color? Everyone stresses about that stuff. So if you can be a little bit complimentary and truthful, of course, don't make stuff up. There's a reason you like the place. Tell them about the stuff that you actually like. It actually gets them to like you. The other thing is, it's something that if you start talking about how much you love the location or this very unique feature of their property, you start to kind of potentially compromise some of your negotiating position. So talk about the stuff that is leaving when they go away, that they can't say, oh, well, if you want this location, you better pay up. Okay, so that's our last little tip for you. Any questions? Type them in the Q&A. We can answer them before we go. Otherwise, what do we do next? What's next from here? Well, if you're early in the process and you're a little bit further out, here's what we recommend. Like I said, there's a ton of planning you could do. And this webinar is a good overview of how to get the best possible price, but your situation is different. Everyone's got a different lease and a different plan. Talk to one of our agents, just schedule a quick 15-minute Q&A. Tell them what you're thinking. Like I said, we're a super low pressure brokerage. If you talk to one of our agents, it doesn't mean you have to buy a home. It just means that you want to know about real estate. And that's what we do. We like to lead with education and start like that. So if you're a little bit further down the line, set up that quick Q&A, get your questions answered. If this is something you're ready to get started on, and like I said, the earlier you start, the better position you're going to put yourself in. Set up a full buyer consultation with our lead buyer's agent. We'll work on honing in on your goals, really understand what your search criteria is, walk you step by step through the entire process, in particular a plan to actually make your home ownership goals happen on your timeline. So more detailed meeting, and it gets you in a great position to go out there and actually get started with the home buying process. So those would be our 2 next steps for you. Other than that, sign up for some more webinars. We got more where this comes from. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about the Chicago real estate market. We talked a little bit about that at the beginning. We'll have an update for you, and we'll answer all your questions about what you want to know about the market. Next, we're going to talk about renting versus buying. It's a good question. Buying's not for everyone. Maybe you should keep renting. Maybe you should buy. We'll get into it. And finally, we're going to do an overview of how to go about buying a home, start to finish, top to bottom. We're going to cover the entire process, and that's coming up in November, so we hope to see you then. Any questions? You're going to get a follow-up email from someone at our company. Feel free to respond with any questions that you might have. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.